Subscribe to my YouTube channel for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling. The rain had started just as Maya stepped out of the yoga studio, her mat still warm under her arm. She stood beneath the narrow awning, watching the droplets dance on the pavement, when she heard her name called from across the street. "Maya, wait up." She turned to see David jogging toward her, his dark hair catching the streetlight's glow. Her heart did that familiar flutter it had been doing for months now, ever since he'd started attending the same Tuesday evening yoga class. There was something about the way he moved, the quiet intensity in his eyes during meditation, that had drawn her in from the very first day. "Looks like we're both caught in this storm," he said, slightly breathless as he reached her. His smile was warm, genuine, and Maya felt herself melting despite the cool evening air. "I was just about to call a cab," she replied, tucking a strand of her auburn hair behind her ear. "Though I'm not sure any will want to come out in this weather." David glanced up at the darkening sky, then back at her. "I have my car parked around the corner. Can I give you a ride home?" The question hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Maya had been hoping for this moment for weeks, imagining what it would be like to be alone with him, too. Hear his voice without the whispered tones of the yoga studio surrounding them. "I'd like that," she said softly. They ran together through the rain, laughing as they splashed through puddles, their yoga mats held high above their heads like shields. By the time they reached his car, they were both soaked, and Maya felt more alive than she had in months. David's car was warm and smelled faintly of cedar and rain. As he started the engine, soft jazz began playing from the radio, creating an intimate atmosphere that made Maya's pulse quicken. She gave him her address, and they pulled into the quiet evening traffic. "I've been wanting to ask you something," David said after they'd driven in comfortable silence for a few minutes. His hands gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. "Would you maybe want to get coffee sometime? I mean, outside of yoga class." Maya's heart soared. "I'd love that. There's this little cafe I know," he continued, his voice growing more animated. "They have the most amazing lavender lattes, and the owner always plays these old jazz records that make you feel like you're in a different era entirely." She watched his profile in the dim light of the dashboard, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about things he loved. "You seem to know a lot about music. My wife used to say I had good taste in." David stopped abruptly, his face going pale. The words hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Maya felt the world tilt slightly. "Your wife?" The silence stretched endlessly. David's knuckles were white on the steering wheel now, and Maya could see the conflict playing out across his features. Finally, he pulled over into a parking lot beside a small park, the rain still drumming against the windshield. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, not meeting her eyes. "I didn't mean to. I should have told you." Maya's chest felt tight. "You're married." It wasn't a question, but David nodded anyway. 5 years now. The rain seemed to grow heavier, creating a curtain around them that made the car feel both intimate and suffocating. Maya stared out at the water streaming down the windows, watching the world blur into abstract shapes and colors. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. David finally looked at her, and Maya saw pain in his eyes that mirrored her own. "Because for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. When I'm with you, when we're in class together, I forget about everything else. I forget about the problems at home, the arguments that go nowhere, the way Sarah and I barely talk anymore except about bills and schedules." Maya closed her eyes, feeling tears threaten. "So, you thought you'd just what? Pretend none of that existed?" "I thought maybe we could be friends," David said, his voice cracking slightly. I told myself that's all it was. But sitting here, now, asking you for coffee, I know I was lying to myself. And to you. The confession hung between them like a weight. Maya opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, seeing now the wedding ring he'd somehow managed to keep hidden during their yoga sessions, the tired lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and difficult conversations. Tell me about her, Maya said suddenly. David seemed surprised by the request. Sarah? Yes. Tell me about your wife. He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. We met in college. She was studying literature, and I was majoring in music composition. We used to spend hours in the library together, her reading Sylvia Plath while I worked on arrangements. She had this laugh that could fill an entire room. Has, David corrected himself quickly. She still laughs, we don't seem to find the same things funny anymore. Maya felt a strange mix of heartbreak and sympathy. When did things change? Gradually, then all at once, David said, echoing Hemingway. We both got busy with our careers. I started teaching music at the high school, and she got a job at a publishing house. We bought a house, adopted a dog, went through all the motions of building a life together. But somewhere along the way, we stopped really seeing each other. Is that why you started coming to yoga? David nodded. Sarah suggested it. She said I seemed stressed all the time, that maybe meditation would help. She was right, in a way. It did help, but not for the reasons she thought. Maya felt her heart breaking for both of them. Because you met me. Because I met you, he confirmed. And suddenly I remembered what it felt like to connect with someone, to feel understood. When you smile during class, when you struggle with a pose the same way I do, when you stay after sometimes to help clean up the mats. I felt like I was waking up from a long sleep. The rain was starting to lighten, but neither of them moved to start the car again. They sat in the cocoon of warmth and jazz music, surrounded by the weight of truths finally spoken. I feel it too, Maya whispered. The connection. From the first day you walked into that studio, I've been drawn to you in a way I can't explain. The way you move through the poses with such grace, the way you always offer to help carry the heavy mats, the way you listen when our instructor talks about finding peace within chaos. David turned to face her fully now, and Maya saw her own longing reflected in his eyes. Maya, I know, she said quickly. I know this is impossible. I know you're married, and I know that what we're feeling is dangerous. But I can't pretend I don't feel it. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their mutual confession settling between them. Finally, David spoke again. I need to tell you something else, he said, his voice heavy. Something I've never told anyone. Maya's heart clenched. What? Sarah and I. We've been trying to have a baby for 2 years. We've been through fertility treatments, specialists, more tests than I can count. The stress of it all. The disappointment every month. The way we've both started to blame ourselves and each other. It's been tearing us apart. Maya felt as if the air had been knocked out of her lungs. David. 3 months ago we found out that the problem isn't medical. It's not that we can't have children. It's that we've become so disconnected from each other that we can't even be intimate anymore without it feeling like a chore, like another appointment to keep. The pain in his voice was raw, and Maya reached out instinctively to touch his hand. The contact sent electricity through both of them, and David looked down at their joined hands with wonder and anguish. The night before I first came to yoga class, he continued, Sarah and I had the worst fight we'd ever had. She accused me of not wanting children, of sabotaging our efforts. I accused her of turning our marriage into a clinical procedure. We both said things we can't take back. Maya squeezed his hand gently. And then you came to class. And then I came to class, he repeated. And I saw you, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than anger or disappointment or obligation. I felt alive. The weight of his words settled over them like a blanket. Maya understood. Now why he hadn't mentioned his wife. Why he'd seemed so desperate to connect with her. He wasn't just a married man looking for an affair. He was a drowning man who had found something that felt like air. What are we going to do? She asked softly. David was quiet for a long time, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her hand. I don't know, he finally admitted. I know what I should do. I should take you home, stop coming to yoga class, and try to fix my marriage. That's what a good person would do. And what does your heart tell you to do? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Maya saw years of loneliness and longing in his eyes. My heart tells me to be with you, to leave everything behind and start over, to find out what it would feel like to wake up next to someone who truly sees me. Maya's breath caught. David. But I can't do that, he continued quickly. I can't just abandon my marriage without trying to save it. Sarah deserves better than that. And you deserve better than someone who would leave his wife for another woman. The logic was sound, but it felt like a knife twisting in Maya's chest. So what does that mean for us? It means, David said slowly, that I need to go home and have a real conversation with my wife. I need to tell her that we're in trouble, that we need help, that we can't keep going the way we have been. And if she's not willing to work on it, then I'll know I tried everything I could. And maybe then I'll be free to explore what this is between us. Maya nodded, understanding the impossible position they were both in. And what about me? What am I supposed to do while you're figuring out your marriage? David brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. I'm asking you to wait. I know it's selfish, and I know it's not fair, but I'm asking you to give me time to do the right thing. How much time? I don't know. A few weeks? A month? However long it takes to know for sure whether Sarah and I can find our way back to each other. Maya felt tears finally spill over. And if you can't, then I'll come find you, David said, his voice fierce with promise. And I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the time we lost. They sat in silence for a while, holding hands in the dim light of the car, both of them, trying to memorize the moment. Finally, David started the engine again. I should take you home, he said quietly. The rest of the drive passed in contemplative silence. When they reached Maya's apartment building, David parked and turned to face her one last time. I meant what I said, he told her. About waiting for you. About finding you again. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. She leaned over and kissed his cheek softly, breathing in the scent of rain and cedar one last time. I'll wait, she whispered, but not forever. As she walked toward her building, Maya could feel David watching her. She turned back once and saw him still sitting in his car, his hands on the steering wheel, his face a mask of conflicted emotions. That night, Maya lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of their conversation. She thought about the pain in David's voice when he talked about his marriage, the way his eyes had lit up when he spoke about their connection, the promise he'd made to find her again. She thought about Sarah too, a woman she'd never met but who suddenly felt like a real person with real feelings and real claim to the man Maya was falling in love with. The thought of being the other woman, of potentially destroying a marriage, made her stomach turn. But she also thought about the way David had looked at her, the way he'd said her name, the way his hand had felt in hers. She thought about the possibility of a love that could heal the wounds they'd both been carrying. The chance to build something beautiful from the ashes of what had been broken. 3 weeks passed without any word from David. Maya continued going to yoga class, hoping to see him there, but his spot remained empty. She found herself distracted during the day, checking her phone constantly for messages that never came, wondering if he was fighting for his marriage or if he'd simply decided she wasn't worth the complications. On a Thursday evening, as Maya was leaving the studio, she saw a familiar figure waiting by her car. Her heart leaped, then sank as she realized it wasn't David. It was a woman about her age, with short blonde hair and tired eyes. "Are you Maya?" the woman asked. Maya's stomach dropped. "Yes. I'm Sarah, David's wife." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Maya had imagined this moment, but the reality was far more uncomfortable than anything she'd prepared for. "I think we need to talk," Sarah continued, her voice calm but firm. They ended up at a small cafe a few blocks away, sitting across from each other at a corner table while rain began to fall again outside. Sarah ordered tea with shaking hands, and Maya noticed she looked as nervous as Maya felt. "David told me about you," Sarah said without preamble. "About your conversation in the car, about his feelings for you, about everything." Maya's chest tightened. "I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." "I know," Sarah said, and her voice was surprisingly gentle. "I can see it in your eyes. This isn't something you planned or wanted. It just happened." They sat in silence for a moment, two women bound together by their feelings for the same man. Finally, Sarah spoke again. "Can I ask you something? What is it about my husband that draws you to him?" Maya was taken aback by the question. She'd expected anger, accusations, demands that she stay away. Instead, Sarah seemed genuinely curious. "He's present," Maya said slowly. "When he's with you, he's completely there. He listens not just to your words, but to what you're not saying. He notices small things. He's gentle and kind, but there's also this strength about him, this quiet confidence." Sarah nodded, and Maya saw tears gathering in her eyes. "That's the man I fell in love with in college. I haven't seen him in a long time. He's still there," Maya said softly. "He's just lost, I think. He feels disconnected from everything that used to matter to him." "Including me," Sarah said, not as a question but as a statement of fact. Maya didn't know how to respond to that, so she stayed silent. "David and I have been going to counseling," Sarah continued, "since that night when he came home and told me about you. It's been difficult. We've had to confront some hard truths about how we've been living, about the people we've become. And..." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, stirring her tea absently. "And we've realized that we stopped being partners somewhere along the way. We became roommates, then strangers, then almost enemies. The baby thing just made it worse. But it wasn't the real problem." Maya felt a mixture of hope and dread. What was the real problem? "We stopped choosing each other," Sarah said simply. "Every day, in small ways and big ones, we stopped choosing to love each other. We took each other for granted, stopped making effort, stopped seeing each other as people worth knowing." "But you're working on it now." "We're trying," Sarah said. "Some days are better than others. Yesterday, David made me laugh for the first time in months. But then this morning we had another fight about nothing important, and I remembered why I've been so angry for so long." Maya felt like she was walking on a tightrope. "Why are you telling me this?" Sarah looked directly at her then, and Maya saw a depth of pain and wisdom in her eyes that spoke of years of struggle. "Because David loves you, and because I can see why." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. "Sarah... I'm not saying this to hurt you." Sarah continued. I'm saying it because I want you to understand what you're choosing. David is a good man, but he's also a man who runs from problems instead of facing them. He's a man who would rather start over than do the hard work of fixing what's broken. Maya felt defensive on David's behalf. That's not fair. He's trying to fix things with you. He is now, Sarah agreed. But only because he found something. Else he wants more. What happens when your relationship hits a rough patch? When you go through a difficult time? Will he run to someone else then? The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Maya wanted to defend David, to insist that what they had was different, but she found herself unable to form the words. I'm not trying to be cruel, Sarah said more gently. I'm trying. To be honest, marriage is hard. Love is hard. The person you choose to build a life with needs to be someone who will stay and fight for you when things get difficult, not someone who will look for an escape route. Maya felt tears threatening again. Are you asking me to stay away from him? I'm asking you to think about what you really want, Sarah said, and to consider whether David is capable of giving it to you. They parted ways outside the cafe. Two women who had shared an impossible conversation about an impossible situation. Maya walked home in the rain, her mind spinning with Sarah's words, and the weight of decisions that felt too big for her to make alone. That night, David called. I heard Sarah went to see you, he said without preamble. Yes, Maya's voice was carefully neutral. I'm sorry. I asked her not to, but she said she needed to meet you for herself. What did she think? David was quiet for a moment. She said she understood why I fell for you. She also said she thinks you're too good for me. Maya almost smiled despite everything. She might be right. Maya, I need to see you. Can we meet somewhere? I have news. Her heart began to race. What kind of news? The kind that's better delivered in person. Please? They met at the same park where they'd had their first real conversation, under the same streetlight that had illuminated their joined hands weeks earlier. David looked different somehow, older but also more at peace. Sarah and I have made a decision, he said, as they sat on a bench overlooking the pond. We're separating. Maya felt her heart skip, then immediately felt guilty for the surge of hope. David, I'm sorry. Don't be, he said. It's the right thing. We've been trying to save something that died a long time ago. We both deserve better than that. But what about counseling? What about trying to fix things? David turned to look at her, and Maya saw both sadness and relief in his eyes. We did try. We talked more in the last 3 weeks than we had in years. And what we discovered is that we're not the same people who fell in love in college. We've grown into different people who want different things. What does that mean for us? It means, David said, reaching for her hand, that I'm free to love you the way I want to. Without guilt, without secrets, without holding back. Maya felt tears spill over as she looked at him. Are you sure this is what you want? Really sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life, David said, bringing her hand to his lips. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to come home to you every night. I want to build a life with you that's based on honesty and connection. And the kind of love that makes you feel more like yourself, not less. And Sarah, how is she handling this? She's sad, but she's also relieved, David said. She said she's been mourning our marriage for a long time, and now she can finally start grieving properly and move on. They sat in comfortable silence, for a while, watching the moonlight dance on the water. Finally, Maya spoke. I waited for you, she said softly. I know, David replied, and I promise you'll never have to wait for me again. 6 months later, Maya and David moved in together. It wasn't perfect. They both carried scars from their past experiences, and learning to trust completely took time. But they worked at it every day, choosing each other again and again, building something new and strong from the foundation of genuine connection they'd discovered in that yoga studio. Sarah, meanwhile, had started dating someone new, a fellow book lover she'd met through work. She seemed happier than she had in years, lighter somehow, as if letting go of a marriage that had been suffocating them both had allowed her to breathe again. Sometimes Maya would think about that rainy night in David's car, about the secret that had felt like it would destroy everything. She realized now that it hadn't destroyed anything. It had revealed what was already broken and cleared, the way for something real to grow. The truth, she had learned, was rarely as devastating as the lies we tell ourselves to avoid it. And sometimes, the thing that seems like an ending is actually just the beginning of something better. On their first anniversary, David gave Maya a small silver necklace with a charm, shaped like a lotus flower, a symbol of beauty that grows from mud, of new life emerging from difficult circumstances. For the woman who taught me that love shouldn't be a burden, he said as he fastened it around her neck. And for the reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Maya touched the charm gently, thinking of that first yoga class, of the rain that had driven them into David's car, of the conversation that had changed everything. She thought of Sarah, who had been brave enough to let go of something that wasn't working, and of David, who had been brave enough to choose love over comfort. To unexpected beginnings, she whispered, and kissed him under the same streetlight where they'd first held hands, where they'd first chosen to be honest with each other about what they wanted. The lotus charm caught the light as they walked, home together, hand in hand, no longer carrying the weight of secrets between them. Behind them, the yoga studio where they'd first met glowed warm and welcoming, ready to offer its gifts of peace and connection to whoever might need them. Some stories, Maya reflected, don't end with the dramatic revelation or the difficult choice. They end with the quiet daily decision to keep choosing love, to keep growing together, to keep building something beautiful from whatever circumstances life provides. And sometimes that's the most romantic ending of all.